thin tone, and screechy palm keys. Teaching saxophone sound is a difficult thing to do, so this week I'm phoning a friend, my YouTube colleague and host of the Get Your Sax Together channel, Jamie Anderson. So here, talking about tone and helping make ours better, my good friend, Jamie Anderson.
Dr.
Hey, Jamie,
Wally,
how are you, man?
doing? Oh,
Good.
I'm so excited to be here. Such a privilege to be in your channel. So, hi, all you Saxophone Academy people. Thanks for having me.
We're glad to have you. I will say, I guess maybe people didn't contact you. We do have a dress code at the Academy. But this time we'll let it slip, and I'll send you our official coat.
I should have brought the blazer. I'm so ashamed. You're shaming me right now.
Well, it's okay. We run a high level operation here at the Saxophone Academy.
I know you do. I'm jealous of your high level
when I can be bothered to post. So, man, we've talked a lot. For the viewers to know, we've been friends for a while now, and we've chatted about non-interview stuff. I mean, for months and months and months, maybe going on a year now, talking about how we teach our students, shooting ideas back and forth. And tone is one of those things that keep coming back. We approach it a little bit differently. At first, I was really resistant and thought, obviously, you're quite wrong. And then I thought, maybe he's on to something, and maybe a variety of experiences would be really useful to my students. So I was excited to have you on here. And before we forget, you've actually got a 3-part lesson series as a free gift to the Saxophone Academy subscribers. Tell us about what you have, and that'll be the link, the only link right down below.
Right, yeah, thanks very much. So this is a 3-part video series. It's called Get Your Tone Together, free masterclass series. What I did was I took my main logo and I changed one word. Did you see what I did there? I thought it was quite clever.
That's amazing. Academy level clever right there, yeah.
Yeah, so Get Your Tone Together. It's going to be a fantastic free masterclass series in 3 chunks separated by a couple of days. So you get one, you get a day to digest it, you get the next one another day, and then you get the third one. And it's just going to be some awesome free teaching helping you to create that sound, that tone that you've always dreamt of. And maybe you're frustrated because maybe the high notes aren't sounding good, you struggle with the palm keys, your low notes are all barky and don't come out, and all these common things that we all struggle with. This is just a free gift to your viewers. And for anybody to enjoy, to try and improve your sound on sax. So I hope you enjoy that. The link's in the description. Thanks very much for doing that. I'm excited to even take that myself. I have dived into some of your other content, and I've always found it, like I said, it's different than what I teach, but it's always very thoughtful and well thought through, which I really do appreciate. So the obvious question is, why do you need 3 videos? Or you actually have an entire course, Total Tone Mastery, or this Get Your Tone Together. Why do we need so many videos when, man, just do long tones, Jamie? Why does that not work? But I mean, especially on internet forums and Facebook, someone will be, here's a good tip, and someone just inevitably realizes, long tones, dude, just do long tones. Why is tone so hard to teach, and why is it such a complex topic? Yeah, I mean, that's an absolutely great question. Why not just do long tones? Well, as we're about to discover, as we explore all this stuff together, there's lots of different ways of getting to the same point. There's lots of different methods. So right from the get-go, we should establish that there's no such thing as a wrong and right. It's only about trying to establish the thing that's going to work best for the most number of people. So when you talk about long tones, it does what it says on the tin. You play a long note. Now, if you've got a faulty embouchure and your voicing isn't great and you've got shoddy breathing and all the things that make up a great sound, when you practice your long notes, you might be increasing the stamina of your embouchure, but you're effectively getting better and better at making a bad sound. Right. So unless you know how to make a great sound, don't keep making that bad sound for longer and longer every day. That's
and ingraining
mental.
It in. Right.
Right. So that explains why long notes possibly might be doing you more harm than good. I mean, if you've got a great sound and you want to build up your embouchure and all sorts of other stuff that we're going to explore, that might work. But as a general rule, I would say it's approach with a little bit of caution unless you know what you're doing.
Absolutely. And as I tell my students, if you hold a piece of dog poop for 5 minutes, at the end of 5 minutes, you still have dog poop. And the long tones is the same thing. You can hold a bad note for 30 beats, and it's still a bad note. We have to learn the changes, the tiny, frustrating changes. And as we've talked about before, why is it so difficult to talk about these changes and to teach tone to students?
Right. Yeah. As we both know, number one, there's a lot of mythology that we have to battle with constantly. Number
And
two,
I've been guilty of some of this. I've perpetuated some of these from years of what my teachers taught me.
right? We all have. Let's be honest. Yeah, absolutely. Secondly, all the important stuff happens in the dark. We've got this double-blind situation where I explain what I'm doing, you can't see it. You try and replicate it as the student, and I can't see what you're doing inside your vocal tract. So we're both kind of stabbing in the dark, and then we have to resort to using metaphors and fairy stories and puppets and any other.
Hold on, puppets are a viable teaching tool, Jamie. Yeah, it's frustrating that we can't see inside the student's mouth, and every time I try to get a couple fingers in there, the parents are always like, please don't do that to my child. And I'm like, well, how am I supposed to know? You know, I don't have access to an X-ray machine, Karen. So it's very difficult. So we do our best to develop exercises that get these changes through metaphor, analogy, and I like some of your exercises. They're kind of, not extreme in a bad way, but extreme in go beyond what I'm used to. So we're dealing with three concepts today. What are the three big concepts that we're going to be talking about today? And you've got some exercises for them.
Okay, first of all, we're going to be talking about embouchure, an aspect of embouchure. We're going to be talking about breath control, air support, breathing in general. And we're going to be talking about voicing, which is the shapes that you make in your throat and mouth. So they're the three areas we're going to touch: embouchure, air, and voicing, which are three of the big players in this equation.
So let's dive in and immediately start talking about embouchure. And you've got an exercise I really like. I think we would both agree. What's the number one killer of good tone that we can easily fix?
Right. I mean, this overly tight embouchure, you know, squeezing up on the reed, narrowing the tip opening, playing too sharp, very pinched, you know, embouchure. That is going to strangle every sound dead in the water before you even get going. So I think we both agree that is the most common flaw that we see in sax players.
Yeah, and I think it's something I like that because we can fix, well, and I like this exercise you have. It's something that we can fix and it makes an immediate difference. And when I teach a bad student, when I teach a beginner student, if the tone sounds strained.
You said it.
Sorry, Johnny. Yeah. Oh, Jared, it's time to get honest. No, if you have them, you know, if when they pull away, you'll see on their mouthpiece giant divots of their teeth digging in, and, you know, it goes hand in hand, that tension and that. So you've got a really good exercise. So how do we start to relax the embouchure? How do we get our students to stop trying to bite through the mouthpiece?
Right. Well, I've always found that this is a quantum leap of degree of magnitude of relaxation in most people's kind of understanding of how tight their embouchure should be. So whereas I used to try and teach people to play how they originally did and then relax it, I found that they weren't even getting close to the relaxation that we're after. So I've flipped it and we start with zero embouchure whatsoever. I call this the slack jaw exercise, which I thought you would like for some reason.
In the southern United States, we try not to use that word because it insults our cousins who are also our wives. Yeah, slack jaw. But yeah, I'm going to get in big trouble. I live in the southeastern United States. So the slack jaw exercise, I love this. Talk us through this.
Okay, should we do this together?
I will.
Okay.
What dignity do I have to lose? I'll try it.
Okay, So we're just going to need our mouthpiece and neck for this one, which you've already prepared.
Roger. Yeah.
God, it's like it's like you knew what I was going to do.
It's almost like, yeah, great minds.
So what we're going to do is you're going to form the top half of your embouchure. Your bottom jaw is going to drop open like a zombie from Walking Dead. And when we blow, obviously, the air is going to just rush through the bottom of your jaw, and we're going to get no sound whatsoever. So right. Okay. Now
that's an improvement over some of my students' tones. Yeah.
That is what you call a relaxed embouchure. So moving forward from there, we're now going to seal the lips around the reed, but don't seal them in the way you normally seal them, just literally to stop the air escaping. Now all the air is going to go through between the mouthpiece tip and the reed, and we're going to get the Darth Vader noises. So let's try that.
So now, I'm blowing a ton of air, but the reed's not speaking yet, correct?
Right, and that's it. Okay. Yeah, and that's a great point. Don't tickle it. You should be blowing full on, and if you're getting a noise, you're using too much pressure at this point.
And I feel slightly dizzy, and that's because I'm using that's normal.
Right.
Should I call an ambulance? Okay.
It's like when you're blowing up the balloon. We're expelling so much air at the moment. It's not a natural situation, but that's where we're going to move next. And you might have noticed my little kind of otter bark in the last example. So we're just going to raise your jaw up a little bit more until that reed starts to bite, and you're going to start getting the donkey bark noises.
And now we're helping wildlife mate in Antarctica. This is great. Okay.
Play along
we're making
at home,
the reed
folks.
vibrate, and there's so little jaw pressure required to make the reed vibrate.
Right. It's the bare minimum amount of jaw pressure required to get that thing barking. Now, you can't really play saxophone exactly like that because the sound is too wild and uncontrolled, and the pitch is going to be all over the place. So, just a tiny bit more. We're going to tighten up a little bit more from the bottom until we've just got control. But that's it. That's all we're going until you can control it. And that is effectively the tension that you're going to use for your saxophone embouchure, which I'm sure most people, or certainly some people, are going to be quite surprised how loose that is. So let's just increase the pressure until we can control the sound.
And now we're defending Gondor. This is great. Okay.
Exactly.
On the second day to look to the east, Jamie. And you're right. It's such a drastic difference than what you think. And I like that approaching from the other end. Instead of starting with your tight, tense embouchure, relax, it starts from the complete other way. And it kind of reboots the brain a little bit. I really like that.
Right. Okay. So that's it. It's a very, very simple exercise, is slack jaw. Hey, I'm going to throw in one more bonus tip. Check this one out. This was
I'm not paying for it, but okay.
We're going off script. Here's another way.
We have a script? Oh, crap.
Here's another really quick bonus tip on the embouchure tightness side of things. First of all, you should be able to blow your neck and mouthpiece and waggle it around. So that's the first half of this exercise. So try just giving it a waggle and still keeping tone.
Goodbye, career.
Right, exactly.
It's the Sonicare toothbrush from hell. Okay.
Now the second little test to see if you've really got a nice loose embouchure, we're gonna blow it out. You're gonna keep your embouchure formed, and you're gonna pull the saxophone away from you. Obviously, health and safety warning here. Look where you're pulling it, all that stuff. Now, if
do not do this if you're operating heavy machinery. Got it. Okay.
Right. Now, if your lips are too tight, as soon as you pull that mouthpiece away, you're going to get a buzz like a brass player.
Oh, okay.
Now, if your lips are loose enough, all you're going to get is. So it should be like this.
Oh, I got a little buzz. Too tight. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Now, if you're using a ton of pressure, this is going to happen.
Got it. Okay.
So there's a couple of little bonus tips which will also help orientate you if you're in the right ballpark for the amount of tension used.
I like that. And that's a great starting point to just kind of reboot the embouchure and show how little. Yeah. Because I'm with you. I'm sure just like you have been in private lessons where I'm like, no, relax more, drop the jaw, relax more. Relax. And there's only so many times you can say that word where it starts to become, I think it's called somatic fixation, where it no longer has meaning. It's just a weird sound. Relax. Is that a word? Yeah. So this is a great exercise to start because, and there's so much more, and you dive into this in your other courses and materials about embouchure development. It's much more than just relaxation. Second big thing, the engine that drives all of this that we have to master is what's the big other concept we're talking about today?
Okay, so the second concept we're talking about is, of course, breathing. This is the engine room of your saxophone sound. And once again, I think possibly there's a miscalibration in people's mind about just how much air you need to blow this instrument. Because let's be honest, when you're a beginner, maybe you're on, a close tip mouthpiece, you might be on a 4 or or what's the Yamaha 4C or
4C,
something
yeah.
like that.
Pretty close, yeah.
And maybe you're on a number 2 reed, sometimes even 1.5, and you don't need much air to get that thing going.
Right.
Now, that's completely cool if you're a complete beginner, but then you build up this legend in your mind that you only need a tiny amount of air to play saxophone. Well,
Right.
you only need a tiny amount of air to start off in saxophone, but if you want to make a great sound, you're going to need to fill the whole instrument with air. You're going to need to try and get every piece of brass vibrating and oscillating, exciting every air molecule in the space that you're in. You need to feel your whole body vibrating with the instrument. That air column is just exciting everything that you can see and feel. And even beyond that, because if somebody was outside this studio, they would hear me play. So I'm even exciting the air beyond this studio. And there's the philosophical question: where does that vibration stop? You could argue it goes around the whole world. So
the excitement stops with my wife upstairs. I can tell you that much. Overtones have nearly gotten me divorced. But you're right. It's so much more. And I think part of the issue may be, and I've taught band for many years while I was getting my wife through school. And in the United States, at least, we have band class where we might have 6, 8 saxophonists all playing together on such a powerful instrument. We're always like, back off, back off, back off. And I think we've trained them, and myself included back then, to play with very little air. And it's a powerful instrument. And then we can blend with the clarinets and the bassoons and whatever those other strange instruments are. But then when you hear the pros, I'll never forget the first time I heard Chris Potter live. And he was warming up before, no microphone, no amplification. And I thought, that sound is ginormous. The amount of air he was putting through the instrument was really eye-opening. I've heard that stories. I've never seen Stan Getz live, but the same thing, that if you saw him live, it was loud. There was just so much air going on.
Right, and that's a great point. And then there's the slightly more abstract concept of projection, which, physicists might argue that volume equals projection, but there is something. The first person that springs to mind is Joe Henderson, who didn't necessarily have the barn door tenor sound, but man, that was a laser beam. He really, like, the intention of the way he threw his sound out was really kind of directional. And then you start moving into more of the philosophical territory where it's, you have to set your intention of what you want to communicate to people. And I think this is all to do with breathing. The sound comes from your breath. You fill the instrument and you got to throw it out there with a real intention of what your sound is going to be. And too many people just play, into their music stand. And that's where your sound is going to die.
Right.
So I know that you're about to bring up the D word, aren't you? So
the big D, yeah. So how do we push more air through? Because in beginning band class all throughout the United States, we have very well-meaning educators who I have nothing but respect for, always say, breathe from the diaphragm.
Right.
Why is that problematic, and what may be a better way to think about it or talk about pushing breath?
Well, I mean, you could accurately say that all these people are half right, couldn't you? Because you definitely, this dome-shaped muscle, the diaphragm that effectively cuts your body in half, you do use it to breathe in. Your diaphragm contracts and it pulls your lungs down, creates this space in your rib cage and squishes all your guts out of the way, which allows your lungs to fill with air. But if you're going to breathe out, your diaphragm, by definition, has to be switched off and relaxed. So it's a little bit misleading to say breathe with your diaphragm. It's actually your abdominal wall muscles that are going to squish your guts back into position and drive the air out of your lungs. So that's another great thing about playing sax, right? You get a six-pack by breathing correctly.
Absolutely. I just wear very well-padded suits to hiding my six-pack.
Yeah, I mean, my six-pack's actually copyrighted. I've sold the sponsorship rights to looking at my six-pack. That's why I'm not showing it right now, but
yeah, absolutely. So
etched from marble it is.
Oh, yeah. That's why I never demonstrate. I always talk about relaxing as she sees the stomach pull out. As your diaphragm pushes down, the stomach pulls out. I'll never demonstrate it on a camera because I eat way too much cheese. But
you know what? Just to butt in there, sorry. That's a great point, and I talk about this in the course. I think this is one of the other reasons, one of the other problems about breathing. When you breathe in, you do make yourself look like you've got a huge belly, which is exactly how it should be.
Right.
And there is a social stigma around that. So people avoid doing it just by habit. You know, it seems to be a socially unacceptable thing to do. So I try and remind people, you know, you're not making your belly big. You're just taking your guts, which are normally in that cavity, and you're pushing them out because your lungs are filling with air, pushing the guts. So it's not that you've got this huge belly. You're just moving, rearranging what's already there. But I think that stops a lot of people taking a breath into the full cylinder of their body.
Right. So then when we exhale, what actual muscles are creating the forced exhalation?
Right. It's your obliques, your abdominal muscles, the walls which kind of sheathe you can imagine you've got a huge wide belt going around your whole body. They contract and it squeezes all the air out of your lungs, and that's what creates the blowing force. Interestingly, when you breathe out in passive exhalation, as opposed to, I'm describing active exhalation where you force the air out. If you're asleep, you use zero muscles to exhale. Your diaphragm pulls down, and then it's just the elasticity of your lungs themselves. That
connective material,
that self-breathe out. But of course, when we're playing saxophone, that's not enough air pressure, so we need to actively squeeze these muscles, and to a certain degree the rib cage on both sides, but not these shoulder down movement, which we're probably going to move on to now.
Okay, shoulder down, but so talk to us about that.
Right, I'm sure you've seen it all too often. You say to a student, okay, breathe in, and then their neck disappears. Michael No Necker appears, and you know, and this is, you know, you can breathe that way. You can force air out with these high muscles. However, it creates a lot of tension in your neck muscles, which is going to strain your vocal tract and is it's going to give you undesirable setup for making a good sound. Plus, it's going to trigger your fight-flight autonomic nervous system, which is going to make you feel tense, because when you're tense, you know, you watch the scary movie and your shoulders are up here.
Yeah.
Like you once said to me, your central nervous system is really quite stupid. And so if you do something that makes it look like you're tense, you're going to feel tense automatically.
And then it creates a feedback loop, and then the more tense you feel, the more your body's like, well, I think something really bad's happening here. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So shoulders should just be nice and relaxed, nice and loose. You know, imagine you're hanging from a thread like a puppet. I mentioned the P word again.
Yeah. We use marionettes here. We're fancy at the
marionettes.
Section. Yeah.
Right. I just couldn't think of the fancy name. So you're like a marionette and you're just hanging, you know, suspended, nice and tall but relaxed. So whenever you take a breath in, you fill up, and the whole like cylinder. If you imagine a line cut off from your shoulders and then a cylinder around your whole body, that's what's going to expand 3D.
For the American audience, pretend like you have a pro wrestling belt, like you're in the WWF. Yeah.
Right.
For all the Hulkamaniacs out there, it's a band about that size, that you should feel expanding when you breathe in, and then you contract it. And I have to tell my saxophone students, the fourth exhalation, it's like doing a crunch. You're contracting those muscles, and then they always look at me, and then we Google a YouTube video of like, this is what a crunch is, because saxophonists, by and large, aren't terribly big into exercise, but we figure it out eventually.
Right, and the most important thing, the end result of all this is that you blow really hard. Now, you might be blowing too hard to begin with. You might say to me, I want to be able to play piano. Just to begin with, let's start putting more air into the instrument in general, all the time, and then we can figure with the dials and switches to kind of get the dynamics. But people are not putting enough air through the instrument. Now, if you put enough air through the instrument and you're beyond the beginner stage, let's say you're more like an intermediate, you might find that your reed is too soft or your tip opening is too closed, in which case maybe it's time to open it up or go up a reed strength, because you don't want that reed to choke up on you when you put enough air through it. So maybe people, when they do put enough air through it, their setup is closing up and they're thinking, damn, I overblew. No, you need to allow your setup to have the headroom for you to put enough air through the instrument, because there's a golden point where the whole instrument is just going to start to sing more when you put more air through it.
Yeah, absolutely. For a while, my signature mouthpiece, the Windy City Woodwinds 56, I only offered it in one tip opening. It was 80 thousandths of an inch, and a lot of people were like, "That's huge for alto." I was like, "Well, not if you're using the amount of air I want you to use." But also, we have to think as jazz, we can't like you mentioned. We're not playing to our stand. We're not playing to the MP3 recorder or whatever the modern day equivalent. I'm making myself a grandpa. We have to picture ourselves filling up a hall. We have to picture like it's your turn to stand up in front of the big band and take a solo. There may not be microphones. You got your jazz quartet and you're in a small hall. You have to picture that not playing 2 feet in front of you, and it's a lot of air. And then, especially if you're wanting to do jazz and rock and fusion, that wider tip opening will allow for that increased air velocity. Not velocity. Absolutely. I won't use that word, but the more volume of air being pushed out.
Right. Yeah, we're not going to pick on all that science stuff.
Yeah.
Hot water.
Yeah. Let me keep my outdated notions of what's actually happening. Thank you very much, Jamie. So air, and you've got some exercises for this in this course.
Right.
What are a relaxed embouchure, a ton of air, that's going to get a lot of sound coming out, and that sound could be horrible. What's the third thing that we really need to then shape that sound?
Right, now we start getting into the realms of how you arrange your mouth, tongue, teeth, vocal tract, which can all collectively be referred to as the way you voicing, how you voice. Because it's a great term, because when you do use your voice to communicate exactly like we are now, you're very quickly and very effectively in a very sophisticated way rearranging all these things so that we can hear ourselves, which is actually quite miraculous if you actually thought about it. It must be. I mean, I know there's members of the animal kingdom who have very sophisticated vocal cords, but I'm sure it doesn't compare to human speech. So all we're doing, we only have to access a fraction of this to play saxophone. You know, a few different shapes, a few different sounds. It's nothing like learning a language, and most people can learn a foreign language. So it is quite a doable thing, but it needs, a bit of attention, and we need to pay attention to what's going on in here, because that's the key that's really going to unlock the DNA of the instrument, what's actually going on inside the overtones and how you get that fat, rich sound.
And it's the instrument before the instrument. It's the actual instrument. It's the most important piece of equipment. You've said that, and it's very true, which is why on a $5 saxophone, or these like $200 Amazon saxophones, a worse mouthpiece, you still sound like you, I still sound like me, because we are the instrument. We're the most important piece of equipment, which is why you and I aren't big into, who cares how the student instrument sounds, how does it feel, and it's because the instrument, our sound comes from us, as I've heard you say it again and again. I teach the same thing. Unless they have the wrong mouthpiece, and then they should buy. I'm just kidding. I know I don't like when beginning students ask me like, Dr. Woolley, should I get your mouthpiece? I'm like, no. Like practice. Like if you need a mouthpiece, sure, but it's not going to transfer. If you have a bad sound, it's not going to fix anything.
Right.
I'm terrible at selling stuff. So how do we start going about this? How do we find the right shape that makes the saxophone sing?
Right, and I know that you teach your exercise 0, which I love, where you start with a nice full sound on your low B flat, which is a great idea, because you're blowing that one conical note with all the tone holes closed in the instrument, which is the purest note in the saxophone, and you can't blow it if you're all uptight. You just won't get the rich sound. So I do a similar thing, but I also teach this Overtones tone matching exercise, which arguably is a little bit more advanced. And people, so people should just remember this as we explore this Overtones idea. It is potentially confusing, and people are often asking, so you're fingering a B flat and then an F comes out, but you're not fingering the F, and then So I do get it. It is a little bit confusing, but what I like to do is play a low note, let's say it's a B flat, and then access the Overtone series, which is these hidden harmonics buried within the sound, which give it its character, its richness, its full spectrum. Right. And we can individually pick out these threads buried beneath the main note. And when we do that, it has the effect of giving the optimal voicing for that pitch on the instrument.
Right.
If you don't have that optimal voicing, it doesn't come out. So by finding, for instance, F with octave key, that's the third
Second. Oh my goodness. Second overtone.
But
I
actually,
have a doctorate.
Yeah, you've hit a good point, because when people talk about harmonics, the fundamental is one.
The fundamental is one, the octave, then the fifth. So that fifth.
But if
so
you're talking about overtones, the fundamental doesn't count. So the first one.
So it's the second overtone. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
So if we play that F with octave key, which is the second overtone of B flat, and we play it as an overtone, and we remember that sensation, then when we play it normally fingered, if we use the same voicing as the overtone, the fundamental of that F is just strong and rings true.
Exactly. Yeah, you got it in one. So let me just see if I can demonstrate this to clear up the confusion. So here's, let's try and make this as simple as possible. Here's a low B flat.
Good one.
Now, without changing my fingers, you can't quite see my right hand, but I'm not going to change any fingers. All these other overtones are available. I think my reed is quite soft, so I won't be able to do very high with these. That was all just fingering a low B flat. So first of all, you realize, oh wow, you can play different notes with a different fingering, which is quite an eye-opener for some people. And specific players, notably starting with John Coltrane and then later Michael Brecker, harness this all the time in their actual soloing. I'm not going to go into it at length, but you'll recognize this kind of sound that people like Brecker use. Which is just accessing these overtones to dramatic and fast effect. So what we now do is we finger the low B flat, we play the low B flat, and we try and find the different overtones and compare them to the sound of the normal fingering. Now, the normal fingering is going to sound thinner because you've got less saxophone available. So we try and imitate that big, wide, fat sound of the overtone by referring to it. So overtone, normal fingering. Can I make it more like the overtone? And the way you do this is just intuitively experiment with the shape of your vocal tract, the shape of your mouth, your tongue position, almost like, you know, chewing food, chewing gum, and try and make different shapes and see if you can get close to the sound of the overtone, and then go back to the overtone, normal fingering. And we do this tone matching exercise to try and tune in the voicing, which is optimal for each note. So if we were doing that F, it would be like this.
Yeah. I love that you went back down to the low B flat at the end.
Right. So you go back to where it all started to really center. Yeah, exactly.
And also make sure you haven't, you know, if you can't slur down to the low B flat, that means you're starting to cheat and use jaw pressure as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you notice that I like to close my eyes and shut off that sense so that you can focus more on listening. And eventually the two, you know, you can get the two, especially as you go higher up the instrument, you can get the two sounding quite similar, and that is the goal. And then next time you're just noodling away, you play a second octave F, and you know your sound is so much bigger and fatter and wider, because really the buttons on saxophone, we're kind of cheating almost every note, especially anything above a C sharp, anything where you press the octave key, you're kind of cheating. You're just, you know, using these buttons to get the right sound. But
I think Adolph Sax knew what he was doing, Jamie. He gave us the keys. We need to use them. Yeah.
We do need to use them, but I'm sure you've had the experience. People are, you know, you go for a G major scale, da 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 da, and you get to the D, and bosh, you get an A or something else. It happens all the time, and that's because the voicing isn't tuned in correctly for the. So yeah, of course the notes come out when you press the buttons, but if you want to get a fantastic sound, you've got to go beyond that with your voicing.
Yeah, and I notice when students start to really understand the voicing for the different notes, the tone fattens is usually the word they think of, but also resonance. It really lets you, the tone just, I don't know the scientific terms of the reasoning, but it just carries. And when I started doing this in my classical playing over an orchestra, or even if you've ever played a solo with a high school band, that is not an easy thing to do volume-wise. In America, the high school wind bands are huge. And so like when I would occasionally play concertos with them, I had to really carry over it, and using the optimal voicing, the resonance difference is just incredible. So you've actually got a series of exercises called, what do they call them? The mothership?
The mothership.
That makes it sound way cool.
Well, it is way cool, isn't it? Yeah. I like to call the Overtones tone matching exercise, which, obviously I take no credit for. It's a long established saxophone exercise. But I call it the mothership because if you only did that and I did a video recently demonstrating it on my channel, and I did it, the whole thing live. It takes 5 or 6 minutes. If you did that every day, I'm pretty sure that your tone will grow and grow and grow in richness and fatness and sonority. That's a good word, isn't it? Sonority.
Sonority, yeah.
That's why I call it the mothership.
Okay, yeah, working on that sonority. I always think resonance, but sonority is another good word. So these are just 3 of the many concepts you're going to be covering and that you do cover in your various courses. But those 3 alone, the voicing is trickier, but the first 2, they're easy to fix.
Right, yes.
And by doing these exercises, you can make just really transformative differences in your sound. And middle school band directors everywhere are going to hate you once they see this.
Now, we should also point out that with great power comes great responsibility, as the superhero credo says. And I've been guilty of this in the past. If you go ahead and do this and you create this monster sound, just be careful the way you wield that bad boy, because in my younger days, I'd be playing in big bands or whatever, and be like, "Hey, dude, you're in second tenor, not lead alto, so let's blend."
Second tenor, the carpal tunnel book, as I call it. Yeah, it's just horrible.
Horrible.
Yeah. So even with a huge sound, you still have to put it in the musical context.
Right. So once you've created this enormous, then you can start shaping it and molding it. Still keep the same breath pressure and relaxation, but of course you're not going to play as loud. But hopefully now you can still have the same richness at all different volumes. So just be careful how you go out and, how you spray that sound of yours around the place, because you can do some damage.
And if your colleagues complain, remember it's Jamie Anderson's fault, not mine.
Yeah, blame me. I'll take it.
Send the hate mail to him. Jamie, they can find you at Get Your Sax Together is your YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And all your stuff is there. And I'll put a link down below to the Get Your Tone Together course, which is absolutely free. And Jamie does not offer tiny little teaser things. His free stuff is genuinely really great free content. He gives away the farm. So definitely go check it out.
I mean, as you do, which is why I'm such a big fan of yours. The stuff that you produce on YouTube is absolutely fantastic. It's complete solutions that people can apply to really improve their saxophone playing. So I'm sure I speak for all your audience, really appreciate that. And I like to try and do the same thing. I don't like a little bite-sized teaser. Let's give people. I mean, ultimately, we want everybody to be better saxophonists, right?
Yeah, we want more people playing the saxophone. It's good for the rising tide. So, and I think that's why we've connected. Is I realize that you're not just hawking PDFs; you're actually teaching the saxophone. And I really appreciate that, man. Thanks so much for coming and talking to us, man. I hope this is not the last time that we talk about this.
Sure thing.
Maybe a different topic.
I feel privileged to be in the channel. Thanks for having me, Willie. A real doctor as well.
Wait till you see I edit in the bunny ears and stuff on you. You'll be able to hear that.
I'll get you back.
Not a chance. Jamie, thanks so much, man. Have a great day, and we'll chat again soon.
Okay, see you later.
Bye, man.
Go practice.
That'll work.
Oh, good timing.
Someone's ringing my doorbell. Holy cow, that is good timing.